to Teaching at the Right Level, Namibia's Literacy Refresher Training. So today we are going to refresh on the goal of our literacy program, one of the key pillars of TaRL, and explain our approach to literacy. So first, what is the goal of the Teaching at the Right Level literacy program if someone asked you? And we should pause the video and have a little discussion about it. Someone says, what are you trying to achieve, this TaRL thing? What is it trying to achieve with the learners? What would you say? Well, the goal is for all learners to become literate. That means they are reading and writing stories in English on their own. And that is not, everything within literacy, but it's two very core skills of reading and writing. And what are they reading and writing? Stories, and they're doing it in English on their own. So what is the third pillar of TaRL? What's that third pillar? Again, pause. See who knows. What is that third pillar of TaRL? It's targeted instruction. Targeted instruction. So what does targeted instruction really mean? Let's dig deeper into that. Well, first of all, it means that TaRL is really different from your normal program. Your normal program is very focused on delivering a curriculum to the learners, pouring lots of information into them, and testing them on how much they've memorized or learned that specific set of information. That is not TaRL. TaRL is about activity-based instruction and building the skills of learners practically to be able to read and write. And the only assessment is the assessment of our leveling tool to see, can they read and understand those stories? So teaching at the right level, this targeted instruction, it really begs a couple of questions. Number one, what is the right level? Teaching at the right level. How do I know what the learners' levels are, and what should I teach once I know these levels? So the right level is where the student is currently at, starting there and then taking them to the very next level in very clear and measurable steps. How you know those levels is based on our leveling tool, but also it's based on our checkpoints. Every single day, we ask one question to the learners to assess whether they've understood the objectives of that lesson. And we're doing that very well. We're using that to see, should we move on to the next objective? But what we're not doing is using that checkpoint to understand what the level of the learners is. What do they know? What do they not know? Not generally with letters and words, because there are so many letters and words, right? Specifically, which sounds or letters do they struggle with? Specifically, which skills are they struggling with? Use it to identify what you should focus on in future lessons, and then teach according to what will get the learners to the next level, addressing their specific challenges. So how do we do that? What is the approach to literacy that we use? Well, number one, it's good to know what are the different approaches out there. One approach is phonics, which is teaching the relationship between sounds and letters. The other is whole language, which is just giving children lots and lots of experience of reading, and then they pick up the language skills of reading naturally. And the third approach is whole word, where you teach children to read a whole word, whole words at a time, for them to usually memorize. So how were you taught to read? How were you taught to read? Again, pause the video. Let's have a little discussion. And which of these approaches do you think is most effective, according to research? Which of these three approaches, phonics, whole language, or whole word? Again, pause the video. Well, the answer is definitely not whole word. Why? Because if that was true, we wouldn't need the TaRL program at all, right? These children are not learning to read naturally just by having words all around them. There's words all around them. That doesn't mean they're learning how to read. I'm also going to argue that it's not the current practice, which is probably how you were taught to read, which is whole word. Why? Because the current practice looks like look and say. Here's snaps, here's the word snaps down here. I'm going to kill and drill, which means we're going to write the word snaps 5 times. We're going to say the word snaps 20 times, right? Or I'm going to write it on the board and talk to you about this is the word snaps. And it's a lot of boring repetition to try and cram that whole word into your brain. The other thing is that it's a lot of words often, right? For us to be able to learn 100 words, you might have to study 5 or 10 words a day for 20 days just to learn 100 words. And once you learn those 100 words, maybe you learn the word snaps, you can't transfer that to new words, even if they're very similar in their spelling. So just because you can read the word snaps, that doesn't mean you could read the word pans, even though that has exactly the same letters, just in a different order. So TaRL is trying to change that, use a different approach where instead of taking 20 days to learn 100 words, we're going to learn to read in 30 days. And how are we going to do that? Well, we have to use a very fast approach, an effective approach, and that is phonics, right? In phonics, you could learn just 6 letter sounds, and we'll try and learn them in a day, one day, those 6 little sounds, and you're immediately able to read 100 words. And you can do it through play by playing with those same 6 letters and making the word ant and nap and nip and pan and past and snap and pants and spat, right? So memorization is the enemy of progress. We do not want to backslide into a practice of memorizing whole words. We want to really focus on phonics and teaching the skill of sounding out words to children so they can use that skill to read hundreds and hundreds of words very quickly instead of a few words very slowly. And this is what research shows. It also shows that the whole word method can actually hurt a child's progress in reading because it's really hard to memorize all those words and you never pick up the skill of being able to sound out words on your own. Every time you see an unknown word, you're just looking to the teacher to say, teacher, what's that word? Tell me the word. You don't have any skills or resources to sound it out yourself. So this leads to 4 big literacy challenges. Number 1, children struggle to recognize sounds, the letter sounds. They might know the letter names and not the sounds. They might know a few or none. They might be confusing those letter sounds with other languages. The sound of a letter in one language is not the same in this language. Decoding, which is just a fancy way to say sounding out words. Again, that skill of being able to figure out snaps on your own, even if you've never seen snaps as a word written before. Fluency, or their understanding of English. This means they have to have enough vocabulary. You cannot learn to read a language that you don't speak, that you don't know, right? You can't read a language that you're unfamiliar with. So you have to know enough English, enough vocabulary, enough fluency to be able to read. And lastly, English. Why am I saying that English alone is a challenge? Well, because it is. Unfortunately, English is a very complicated, kooky, crazy language in which one letter can make a sound, 2 letters can make one sound, 3, sometimes even 4 letters can make one sound. That same letter might make 4 or 5 different sounds. It might sound different in different words. And the spellings are just like really, really inconsistent and insane, which makes English quite a difficult language to learn how to read in. So the challenges or how, a child, if you get your child who's at beginner letter or word level or para level, they correspond exactly to these levels, right? If you are at beginner in letter, you struggle to recognize sounds. If you're at word level, you struggle to read words, right? Read more complicated words, right? Which is why you can't get into a paragraph. And if you're stuck at paragraph level, that means you struggle with fluency. You're not quick enough in your reading. You don't know enough words to be able to read a whole story. So the solutions are exactly corresponding to those challenges. Beginner and letter level children, they need to focus on letter sounds and learning them. Word level children, they need to focus on sounding out words and being able to read more and more complicated words. And para level children, they need to have a greater vocabulary and fluency in English so that they can move up to reading stories. So what about our story level children? There were a lot of questions about this. A lot of children enter into the TaRL program already at the highest level, right? Already at story level. What is our goal for them? What are we trying to how do we understand what to do there? Well, they are at challenge number 4, English. English, they should be learning English at the right level, which means according to their needs and challenges in English. Unless they are experts in English, you are not done, right? Unless they are able to read all of the words and really, really advanced stories and paragraphs, there's always a higher level that a story level child can go. So you're looking at longer and harder stories, and you're looking at writing. The skill of writing comes into play once children have mastered the ability to read, and you're getting them to write better with better words and vocabulary, with better grammar and sentence structure, and a big focus on spelling, because spelling also helps reading. So what are the steps to developing these literacy skills? So again, let's pause the video, talk to each other. What do we think those steps are? Well, number 1, mother tongue. So a student who learns how to read in their home language is actually better off being able to read in a second or a different language. I know that probably sounds like, no, that's not true. They keep getting confused. Afrikaans is this, whatever, Khoikhoi is that, blah, blah, blah. But it's actually true because they're more confident. It comes more naturally, and they're able to hear the sounds and words and understand them a lot better in their mother tongue. And they're able to transfer those skills again to the English language. So you always want to start there. Once we're in English, we have those entry points, right? Again, beginner and letter, they struggle with letter sounds and the skill of blending, which is blending the sounds together to make words. Word level children, they struggle with words because they don't know enough words to be able to read a paragraph. Paragraph level children often just have a limited vocabulary, so they're not able to read fluently enough to read a whole story. And story level children should improve on their comprehension, which is reading for meaning, being able to answer questions and understand what you've read, spelling and writing. So we know what we have to do to get them out of there, right? We got to get them out of those levels, learning some skills, and to the next level. And there's a little black box in between them. So how do we do that? So I thought it might be helpful to show it in a different way. So we're going to try this out. So again, this is the same process, beginning and letter level, going down to word, going down to paragraph and story, and to the infinity of leveling up with your writing and your story reading. So you start with learning your letter sounds, learning how to read simple words, paragraphs, stories, and writing. And you can see there's space in between. The spaces are, well, what do we do to get from that one to that one to that one to that one? And so what we do is we go through a literacy development process. First, you learn your basic A to Z letter sounds. Then you learn how to make syllables. Syllables are the building blocks of words. They're the parts of words. They require a vowel. All words have vowels together with a non-vowel or a consonant. So B and A, ba, ba, be, ba, those things. So you're able to blend the letter sounds together to be able to sound out little short parts of words, and then you're able to blend these special sounds. So again, in English, 1, 2, 3, sometimes even 4 letters can make one sound. So you have to know these special sounds in English so that you're able to read simple words. English doesn't wait to get complicated. Those special sounds are in even your most basic word. The word "the" is the most common word in the English language, and it has a special sound. The TH is not saying "tuh," it's saying "the," right? Then you learn alternative spellings. Again, English, wild, wild west out here, real crazy, has a lot of different ways to spell the same sound. You learn complex words, which are longer words with more complexity, where you have to decode and have a bunch of syllables, multiple syllable words. Then you read paragraphs, stories, really, really digging into comprehension, making sure they read with meaning. They're not just decoding without understanding the words that they've read. And then lastly, writing skills. So that's the same thing, just mapped out this way on our objective sheets. It also corresponds exactly to our charts. So, objective 1, then we learn our vowels, and then we learn our special sounds. One thing just to note, I know we have these questions, and I'd love, again, pause the video and discuss this. Can anyone teach phonics? Is there a special type of person that needs to teach this? And what do we do if we really mess this up? maybe you feel like you were messing it up, right? What do? Well, number one, yes, anybody can teach phonics. It does take some practice. It takes unlearning the adult view on words, right? Because we tend to, at this point, do it unconsciously. We're not aware of the fact that we even know these letter sounds. We might believe we don't know them, but you 100% do. Also, if we mess up the sounds, it's actually okay. If I say instead of that's not that big a deal because you're learning a skill, right? You want to be close and you want to try and be as accurate as possible. But if you mess up, it's not the end of the world. The most important thing is that you can correct yourself very quickly and you're able to get the students back on track. Word level children, again, you're using our spelling chart, which shows all the different ways to spell the same sound in English. You start with your basic A to Z, then some vowels, and then lastly, special sounds. For paragraph level children, you're building vocabulary and rhymes, synonyms, and antonyms, all these different things. Why am I doing storytelling? It's to build vocabulary and fluency in the English language. So again, we'll be showing them different words that builds their vocabulary and uses these different sounds so that they're not coming across these things for the first time. They're able to see that pattern. A lot of English is, pretty crazy, but it does have patterns. Then they see vowels and then special sounds, same structure across. And lastly, the story level children, they learn tenses, the parts of a good story, the beginning, middle, and end, synonyms and antonyms, again, building that vocabulary. You do one part of the chart at a time, building their oral and written vocabulary, in their reading, you're starting with paragraphs and moving to longer and longer and more complex stories. You're ensuring that they're reading with meaning by discussing comprehension questions at the end of every single para and every single story. And you really want to make sure they're encouraging creativity. Don't give them a list of synonyms and antonyms. That's not going to build their skills. They have to be able to come up with synonyms and antonyms on their own. Remember, they are the ones that need to be able to do a skill, not understanding information that you pour onto them. And lastly, writing, use the spelling chart to be able to spell very well, build, again, vocabulary, build their ability to write their own sentences. Again, you want to start with writing short paragraphs and then get up to longer and longer stories. So that is teaching at the right level, and that's how we achieve this goal of reading and writing stories in English on their own.